All right, Joel. So we do this every year.
Yeah.
And last year you had said that you thought that Michigan was going to be a lot better than a lot of people were giving credit for. And you talked about the offensive line. If it kind of came together, that Michigan would have a shot. Obviously, they did because of that. What do you look at now this year as far as Michigan's opportunity?
The exact opposite side of the ball. Really confident in what I think Michigan can be offensively. Might be one of the more skilled offenses in the conference outside of maybe Ohio State. I think that they can be explosive offensively, probably a bit more dynamic than maybe they were even a year ago. The question for me is, what's their defensive line going to be like? You know, when you trying to replace Ajabo and Hutchinson is not easy, obviously, and what they were able to do under Mike in his first year was really good. So with Coach Minter, I'll be interested to see what the defense does, because in a large sense, I think that they will go as far as their defense allows, because their offense is going to be as good as any in the conference, maybe outside of Ohio State.
Now, one of the things that when you talk about the offense, we're looking obviously at the quarterbacks, and I won't get to that momentarily, but one of the things that you said to me before the Wisconsin game last year is you pointed at Donovan Edwards and you said that kid's going to be a stud.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you believe that and what kind of impact you think he'll have this year?
Okay, so probably good for Michigan in this sense that I don't think Donovan's getting nearly the love or hype in the preseason, maybe until now, that he should. I think that he's a dark horse Heisman contender. I think he's a dark horse offensive player of the year in the Big Ten, and primarily because I think he's about as complete as they come for a young player in particular. Even last year as just a baby, right, when it comes to experience. He caught it really well out of the backfield. You saw that come to fruition in particular against Maryland in that game. The screen passes that became more prevalent after Blake left with his injury, in particular in the Big Ten championship game. He's really good at that. But he's also a great runner in the football. I felt like he showed signs outside of the tackle box, inside of the tackle box. So while missing Hassan Haskins is hard, I think that Donovan could be a more complete player, maybe not quite as powerful of a straight-ahead runner, but close because of his size, and yet he gives you the element of explosiveness, of the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, and that 1-2 punch with him and Blake as a combination, I think, is as good as any out there.
Now, obviously, you being a former quarterback, Michigan has what a lot of people are considering to be a quarterback controversy. Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy. What are your overall thoughts about how that might look when it comes to the season?
It's so fascinating because last year, my thought during the course, and I may have told you this, but my thought during the course of the season was that J.J. was the player that would eventually have to take them above where Cade had them. And I thought that they were going to have to go to that point in order to beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten championship game. And that didn't come to fruition. But the reason is because the defense is what elevated them. Aiden's game went to a totally different level. Ajabo, which was kind of an unknown commodity at the beginning of the year, even in the first few weeks, David Ajabo became a massive threat and weapon on the defensive side. So because the dominant defense started to elevate the play, they didn't need the offense to transform. So what they were able to do is, I think they only threw 3 passes in the second half against Ohio State or something like that. They were able to kind of go back and be like, okay, we can be a conservative team, have Cade be our quarterback, and go win. And that might, Cade, I'm sure, would think that that's a knock, but that's what I thought. This year it'll be interesting because I think that they are going to need the offense to be the catalyst, to be, at some point this year, they're going to have to win a game 45-42. I think that that's going to happen. Is Cade the guy that can take you to that point, or is JJ the guy that is going to have to be there with his ability and playmaking ability? So I don't know who the quarterback is going to be. I think both of them are really talented players. I think JJ is probably just more dynamic, but Cade is a winner, and he didn't turn the ball over. And one thing I know about Jim is he really wants a quarterback that he trusts as it relates to turnovers. And Cade was certainly a guy that was safe with the football and didn't make mistakes, and I know that Jim loved that.
Now, one more around the offense.
It's a long word salad there on the quarterback issue. I wish I had a better answer.
With the offense that we saw in 2020, Michigan had a little bit too much when it came to the running back room, so they almost didn't even go with it. How do you balance when you have so many different receiving playmakers? Obviously, they have a loaded wide receiver room, which I personally feel isn't getting talked about enough.
Yep.
And you've got the tight ends as well.
Well, Ronnie's back. He was their best. He was arguably their best offensive player at the beginning of the year, and then he was just gone. And Drell shows up in that Michigan State game. He's a fantastic player. Eric is, I think, as good as any. This is why I think their offense can be, special. If you worry about production from individuals, I think you're worrying about the wrong thing, right? And Ohio State should be the case study in this. Guys can get their touches. Guys can get their yards as long as they're working towards a singular goal and not an individual goal. I think that it can work out. And this is an offense that I think can produce on an extremely high level, as productive of an offense as Michigan has maybe ever had.
Now, on the defensive side of the ball, you expressed obviously the concerns about the defensive line, but is there any area there that you're confident in? Last year, you were really confident in the defensive front.
It's so unknown because of the change in coordinator. Like if Mike was back, I would have a better feel for just like his philosophy, his defensive structure, the returning players, what I knew was going to be the strength. It's a real unknown, to be honest with you. I don't know exactly what to expect from that defense. You've got new personnel, you've got a new coach. I know they're probably not going to try to change a lot of things from a schematic standpoint, but his fingerprint's going to be different. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I trust on the defense. That doesn't mean I don't trust anything. I just don't know yet. And I think that's something that will have to come to fruition early in the year.
Now, the Cleveland.com poll came out yesterday, and that they had Michigan second behind Ohio State in the East. It kind of feels to me like for a team that's kind of running it back, that you bring back so much offense. Obviously, there's questions on the defense. Michigan isn't really looked at as being a potential, even though some of the polls have them, relatively high in the preseason. They're not getting talked about as being that potential team that can go again to the college football playoff. What are your thoughts about where they could be this year?
I think the toughest part is that I do think, like, when you look at Ohio State, I'm going to have them number 2 in my overall poll. They've got questions on the defensive side as well, obviously, but their returning offense is pretty dynamic, in particular at the quarterback spot. And with Ryan back calling the plays, it's easier to put Ohio State as a favorite with their personnel, the way that they've recruited. When you miss Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, that's a big missing component because of the importance that defense had. So I think Michigan could absolutely go out and win the conference. There's no doubt. And at the same time, it's not going to be easy. I don't think that they're being overlooked necessarily, primarily just because of what Ohio State is returning and where they return it.
Now, last one for you. Kind of did the same thing last year. Michigan returns this time to the college football playoff if blank.
If they have, if they've got, it's on the defensive side. I just don't know what the standard is really, because I don't know exactly how explosive their offense is going to be. If they've got a top 25 defense, then they're going to have a great chance to win the conference, win the division, and go back to the playoff. If they are outside of that top 20, top 25 defense, it'll get a little bit dicey.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Joel.
Yeah, you bet.